Have you ever felt like you were one step away from transformation, but then all of a sudden everything went back to square one? Like something inside you was about to change. And then, silently, the strength evaporated? This is not a lack of will. It is not spiritual laziness. It is the invisible field of your old identity trying to survive. There is a precise moment when this happens, a moment when the energy of the new begins to push against the structure of the old, and the old resists. It is subtle, but it is real, and it happens for most people between the 17th and 21st day of any profound attempt at change. That is when almost everyone gives up. But Napoleon Hill, over 100 years ago, already knew this. He didn't just write about success. He wrote about frequency. He talked about definite purpose, but he also talked between the lines about vibrational coherence. What he discovered when he interviewed more than 500 of the greatest names in history was not just a set of habits. It was an energetic pattern, a hidden cycle, a specific time when the mind, body, and emotion come into sync. If sustained with discipline, that time has a number, and that number is 54. 54 days, not 30, not 21, not 40, 54. It's as if reality needs this cycle to begin to bend before you. It's in this space-time that neurons reconfigure themselves, that the vibrational field reorganizes itself, and that the universe finally begins to respond. And it's not just about biology, it's about vibration, it's about field, it's about presence. William Walker Atkinson, another silent master, said that every mental vibration sustained with emotion creates a lasting impression in the ether. That's not metaphor. That's spiritual science. That's emotional neuroscience. That's natural law. But here's what almost no one understands. The 54-day cycle is not about achieving something external. It's about dissolving the internal frequency that's blocking the natural flow of life. And that takes more than willpower. It takes surrender. Most people start this process with intensity, with enthusiasm, with promises. They write goals. They make affirmations. They visualize. But deep down, they are still afraid. They are still stuck in time. They are still expecting quick results. And then, when the external doesn't respond, the vibration drops. Faith evaporates. The wavering mind takes over, and the cycle breaks. But if you go through, if you sustain, if you allow the defined mind to remain active for 54 days, something changes. Not outside, inside. And because it has changed inside, the outside has no choice but to follow. This video is not an explanation. It is a journey into your own vibrational field, a journey back to your original frequency. Here, you will understand why your previous processes failed. You will see clearly the exact point where you sabotage yourself. You will learn how to restructure with silent and powerful practices your deepest energy. You will understand that it is not magic. It is precision. It is persistence. It is practical spirituality. It is neuroplasticity with intention. During the next few hours, each word will be a seed, each pause, an invitation to silence, each teaching, a step within yourself. And in the end, you will not be the same because something in you has already begun to remember. Something in you already knows that this cycle could be the beginning of everything. Invisible error, confusing intensity with consistency. In the beginning, everything seems possible. There is an enthusiasm vibrating in the air, as if the universe is finally about to respond. You feel that now it will happen, that this time it will be different. The first few days are charged with an electric energy. It is dopamine acting up. It is the excitement of something new. But dopamine is not commitment. It is impulse. It does not sustain, it initiates. The human brain is seduced by novelty, but it only changes through repetition. What initiates a change is emotion. What consolidates it is habit. And here lies the blind spot of most people, believing that the initial strength is enough to create a new field of reality. Napoleon Hill once said that real faith is not the feeling at the beginning, but the frequency sustained halfway through, when everything still seems the same on the outside. The intensity of motivation may even generate movement, but it is emotional consistency that builds a magnetic field around your purpose. If you rely only on the euphoria of the first few days, you are building your new life on shaky ground. When that emotion evaporates, and it always does, what's left? It's in this void that the old creeps back in. Silently, it disguises itself as discouragement, as tiredness, as lack of time. But in truth, it's your energy field returning to its previous pattern because it hasn't found a new structure to support itself. The universe doesn't respond to your excitement. It responds to your coherence. You can even declare your dreams out loud, but what you do silently every day is what shapes your destiny. There's a subtle wisdom in repeating even when you don't feel inspired. There's spiritual power in doing what needs to be done without emotional drive as your driving force. Transformation isn't born from intensity, it's born from vibrational persistence, from the silent alignment that holds even in the absence of applause, even in the absence of results, even in the absence of certainty. It's in this kind of presence that the field restructures itself, not all at once, not with a bang, but like someone who is relearning to walk with different feet, to think with different thoughts, to feel with different emotions. The beginning is intense. What remains is transformative, and what remains transforms. Why most people give up before the real transformation begins. The pain of giving up is not the pain of failure. It is the pain of breaking away from the old self that is still trying to survive. There is a critical point within any process of profound change, a point where the new has not yet become a habit, but the old is already losing strength. This point is unstable. It is uncomfortable. It is scary. It is where almost everyone stops, not because they do not want to change, but because they mistake resistance for a sign of failure. When, in fact, this resistance is the last cry of the identity that is being dissolved. During the first 20 days, the body is still operating with the same internal commands. The old emotions are still present. The mental chemistry still repeats the previous pattern, but consciousness that has already begun to change. And when consciousness begins to expand, but the body is still stuck in the past, a conflict arises. A tiredness that is not physical, an anguish that is not rational. It is the field trying to reorganize itself. It is the frequency adjusting itself. It is the mind trying to understand why it still does not feel the fruits of the transformation it has begun to build. But it is precisely there, in this place of uncertainty, that something new can be born. If you cross this point, if you sustain the energy despite the emptiness, a transition occurs. The vibration begins to stabilize. The new begins to take root. And the old, finally, begins to lose its dominance. It is like crossing a bridge between two versions of yourself. A bridge where the wind blows hard, where the ground seems to shake, but which only leads to the other side for those who decide to continue even without guarantees. Napoleon Hill knew this. He called it persistence. But it was not blind persistence. It was vibrational persistence, a conscious choice to stay focused even without external signs of progress. Because true progress happens first in the invisible. Reprogramming begins where no one sees it. In the way you wake up, in the way you think in silence, in the way you feel, even when no one is looking. Most people give up because they expect to feel different right from the start. They expect the pain to go away quickly, expect the answer to come soon. But true transformation is not quick. It is profound, and everything that is profound takes time to reveal itself. Giving up early is like abandoning a flower that has not yet crossed the earth. It is forgetting that the invisible works before the visible. It is not realizing that your greatest spiritual strength lies in continuing, even without applause, even without proof, even without certainty. This is the faith that transforms, the faith that goes through the darkness, knowing that the light will come, not because it needs to, but because it already is, because it has already become. Beware of the cycle of hope, frustration, self-abandonment, There is a subtle pattern that repeats itself in the journey of those who seek inner transformation. It is almost invisible, but it has a powerful force. First comes hope, that light in your chest that tells you that now everything will change. You feel the call, you believe, you start. And for a while, everything seems possible, but then, slowly, something empties. Enthusiasm gives way to doubt. Clarity begins to cloud, and frustration sets in. This frustration is not just due to lack of results. It is because you feel that, once again, perhaps nothing will change. It is a silent pain, almost an internal shame, as if, deep down, you were disappointing yourself. And this feeling, if not welcomed, makes room for self-abandonment. You begin to let go of your rituals. You postpone your practices. You forget your promises, and little by little, you disconnect from what you started to build. And everything starts again. Hope, frustration, self-abandonment. This cycle imprisons thousands of souls, not because they are not strong, but because they were taught to expect immediate results. We live in a culture that idolizes the fast, that confuses miracles with magic, that believes that if something is spiritual, it must be instantaneous. But the soul has a different time. Reprogramming has a different cadence. It is not about rushing, it is about presence. William Walker Atkinson said that emotion sustained with intention is more powerful than any isolated technique. And Hill added that thought only becomes creative when it is maintained with faith and a defined purpose. This faith is not the faith of enthusiasm. It is the faith of constancy, the faith that continues even when nothing seems to be happening. Because something is happening. It always is, it's just that you don't always see it. Sometimes, the greatest proof that you are changing is precisely frustration, because it shows that you are no longer satisfied with the old. It shows that your soul no longer accepts the previous pattern. This is not a failure. This is a sign. But if you don't understand this, you give up. And by giving up, you confirm the pattern you're trying to change. And then it all starts over again, over and over again, until one day you choose to stay in the void, to stay in silence, to stay in the absence of evidence. And then something breaks free, because you have broken out of the cycle. You no longer depend on hope to act, or on frustration to stop. You are finally present. And presence is what breaks the pattern. Presence is what initiates the new. Presence is what sustains the invisible until it becomes reality. 54 days are not about results, but about identity. The human mind, conditioned by years of external pressure, has been taught to seek proof. Proof that it is on the right path. Proof that it is moving forward. Proof that it will be rewarded. Therefore, when someone begins a process of transformation and does not see immediate results, the natural impulse is to doubt, to disbelieve, to question. But the 54 days we are talking about here are not a path to visible results. They are an invisible journey towards a new identity, an identity that is not formed by force, but by vibration. Napoleon Hill never spoke only of goals. He spoke of who you need to become in order for these goals to happen, because desires are not fulfilled just by wanting. They are fulfilled when there is someone vibrating from the frequency that these desires require. And this frequency is not activated by ready-made phrases, nor by sporadic actions. It is built with daily presence, with sustained emotions, with habits that shape the being, not just the doing. During the 54 days, the universe is not testing you. It is responding to your frequency. And your frequency, during this period, is being shaped by what you feel, what you choose to hold on to, and what you are willing to let go of. It is an internal process, an energetic recalibration that requires surrender. The old self, with its fears, impulses, and distractions, does not dissolve by decree. It needs to be replaced. And for that, time is needed. Time for the body to learn a new rhythm. Time for the mind to accept new commands. Time for the heart to trust another narrative. Identity is accumulated vibration. It is not what you say you are. It is what you maintain that you are, even when no one sees it. And the 54 days are a sacred ground for this sustenance, a ground where you do not seek approval, nor miracles, nor guarantees. You simply walk, one step at a time, one thought at a time, one emotion at a time. And in this walk, something is built, something is revealed, something becomes, because you are no longer the same. It's not about conquering, it's about embodying. It's about aligning with what already exists on another frequency. It's about allowing the new you to take shape without having to be forced. You're not trying to create an outcome. You're allowing a new version of yourself to emerge. And that is much deeper, much more real, much more powerful. Clear mind versus wavering mind. There is a silent force that sustains all great transformations. It is not loud. It does not impress. It does not attract attention, but it moves the invisible. Napoleon Hill called this force definite purpose. But behind these words, there is something even deeper. The mind that has decided. The mind that does not negotiate with doubt. The mind that remains even when everything around it seems to be wrong. Most people live with a wavering mind. A mind that wants but fears. That dreams but postpones. That believes, but only until the first obstacle. The wavering mind is fickle. It reacts to the environment. It allows itself to be influenced by the external. One day it is confident, the next it is in doubt. One day it feels certain, the next it questions everything. This oscillation creates noise, and where there is noise, there is no clean vibration. And without clean vibration, the universe does not respond clearly. The clear mind, on the other hand, is a living decision. It is not based on fleeting emotions, but on deep alignment. It is chosen, and when you choose, it becomes magnetic, because there is an energetic coherence in true decision. Coherence between thought, emotion, and action. Coherence that creates a field that creates reality. And this cannot be achieved with force. It can be achieved with constancy. During the 54 days, the wavering mind tries to regain control. It whispers doubts, it presents arguments, it recalls past failures. But all of this is just a reflection of the old identity trying to maintain its place. If you listen to these noises too much, you lose your center. But if you sustain the frequency of the decision, something begins to consolidate. It is as if the universe begins to recognize your vibration as a new truth. And then, slowly, it begins to reorganize the circumstances around you. Having a clear mind does not mean not feeling fear. It means not being guided by it. It does not mean the absence of uncertainty. It means being firm even in the face of it. It is this firmness that transforms intention into direction, desire into reality, will into a magnetic field. And this firmness only arises in practice. In the silent practice of continuing, of choosing again, to sustain, even when it seems like nothing has changed, because deep down, everything is already changing. Each aligned thought strengthens the field. Each coherent emotion reinforces the identity. Each decided action sends a clear signal to the universe. I am ready. I am available. I am becoming. The defined mind is a portal to a vibrational field where dreams stop being distant and start becoming inevitable. The energetic failure of intention without structure. Intention without action is like a seed thrown into the wind without soil to take root. It carries potential but finds no support. In the invisible world of energy, wanting is not enough. Dreaming is not enough. Feeling desire is not enough. The universe does not respond to punctual enthusiasm. It responds to vibrational coherence, and coherence only arises when there is structure, when there is ritual, when there is practice. Many people live trapped in desire. They desire strongly, they think intensely, they believe with faith, but they do not create containers for these intentions. They do not establish routines. They do not cultivate habits. They do not create small daily rituals that sustain the energy field of what they wish to manifest. And then, over the course of days, the vibration weakens. The intention disperses. The field becomes unstructured. Napoleon Hill understood this profoundly. Behind every defined purpose, there was a discipline, a practice, a ritual. The purpose was not just mental. It was lived. It was repeated. It was embodied. Because what is repeated with intention becomes a vibrational pattern. And what becomes a vibrational pattern inevitably begins to shape reality. Without structure, intention loses strength. It dissolves into routine. It dissolves into commitments. It fades away in the face of distractions. The mind without firm direction becomes vulnerable to the environment. And in this state, there is no conscious creation. There is only unconscious repetition. That is why structure is not a prison. It is a channel through which energy can flow steadily, a channel through which the invisible can become visible. The right structure does not have to be complex. It has to be sacred. It has to be yours. It can be a fixed time, a repeated word, a moment of silence, an open notebook, a place of presence, anything that acts as a physical and vibrational reminder of the new self that is being formed. When intention meets structure, the vibration stabilizes. And when the vibration stabilizes, the field responds. That is the point. Energy responds to coherence. And coherence is when what you think, feel, and do go together every day, even if only for a few minutes. It is this union that creates a new vibrational identity. And it is this identity that begins to attract, not what you desire, but what you have already become. Because in the universe of frequency, you do not receive what you want. You receive what you sustain. And only those who build structure sustain. Day after day, vibration after vibration, choice after choice. Invisible ritual, the silent repetition that shapes the quantum field. There are deep forces that operate in the invisible, forces that make no noise, that do not ask for attention, that do not seek recognition, but that, day after day, are shaping reality in a subtle and constant way. One of these forces is silent repetition, the gesture that no one sees, the word whispered in intimacy, the visualization done in the dark before the world wakes up. That is where transformation begins. It is not in the euphoria of the morning after a decision, nor in the excitement of discovering a new method. True change begins in the vibrational repetition of an internal state, a vibration that you decide to sustain, not because you feel it, but because you choose it. It is at this point that visualization ceases to be a mental exercise and becomes a vibrational practice. It is not about seeing with the eyes of the imagination. It is about feeling with the energetic body. It is about living, even if silently, the frequency of what you wish to embody. Napoleon Hill understood this when he spoke about creative imagination. But this imagination was not free. It was applied, targeted, charged with emotion, sustained by repetition. Visualizing is not fantasizing. It is training the body to believe before reality responds. It is putting the nervous system in daily contact with the emotion of the new, so that, little by little, the body becomes an accomplice to the manifestation. And when the body believes, the field believes too. Words of power upon waking, a simple gesture, a recurring thought, a subtle intention. All of this, when done with presence, becomes a ritual. And the ritual, when maintained with constancy, becomes vibrational programming. You are, even without realizing it, informing the field who you are becoming. And the field responds, not in the time of the ego, but in the time of coherence. The quantum field does not respond to what you declare once. It responds to what you repeat with intention, to what you feel with presence, to what you live with constancy. That is why silence has so much power, because in silence there is no distraction, there is no mask, there is no performance. There is only you, and the vibration you are choosing to maintain. This is the true invisible ritual, the silent practice that, day after day, is writing a new energetic signature into the universe. A signature that says, I am, I have become. And when this happens, when the vibration stabilizes at this frequency, the invisible begins to bend. Reality begins to rearrange itself, not by magic, but by resonance, because everything that is repeated with emotion becomes inevitable. and everything that becomes inevitable becomes real. Why silence has more vibrational power than loud affirmations. Sound may be beautiful, but silence is sacred. There is a dimension of existence that can only be accessed when the noise ceases, when the mind becomes still, when the need to control gives way to listening. In this silent space, something is revealed, something is reorganized, something is aligned, because silence is not absence. Silence is presence, a deep, dense, living presence. And it is in this presence that the vibrational field finds space to restructure itself. We often seek transformation through the repetition of words, motivational phrases, positive affirmations, mantras. And although these tools have their place, they become empty when they are not anchored in inner silence, when they become just mental noise, when they are said to try to convince oneself of something that has not yet been felt. True vibration does not come from volume, it comes from coherence. And coherence is born in silence. Napoleon Hill understood the importance of directed thought, but the most powerful thought is the one that emerges from a clean inner space, from a mind that is not trying to prove anything, that is not reacting, but that is simply being. Because in this state of being, the body aligns itself, emotions calm down, and energy begins to flow more purely. The field then responds, not to what was said, but to what was felt. William Walker Atkinson spoke of mental vibration as a real force, capable of influencing other minds, environments, and circumstances. But he also said that the most powerful mind is the concentrated mind, the mind that is not scattered, the mind that knows how to rest. And this rest is only possible in silence, not the silence of the mouth, but the silence of the ego, the silence of anxious wanting, the silence of comparison, the silence of haste. Entering this state is like returning to the womb of creation. It is allowing the vibration of the new self to be gestated without interference, without noise, without the need to prove. Because it is in this fertile void that the new reality begins to take shape. There is no struggle, there is no urgency, only presence. And that presence, when sustained, transforms everything. Silence, when filled with intention, becomes the most fertile soil for conscious manifestation. That is why moments of stillness, spaces of introspection, moments of conscious pause are so essential. They do not interrupt the journey. They sustain it. They deepen it. They realign it. Because in silence, the soul remembers. And when the soul remembers, the universe responds. Without words, without noise, only with coherence, only with flow, only with vibrational truth. Real example. The businessman who changed his financial vibration in 54 days. He was no longer looking for a method, nor a ready-made formula. He was looking for silence. After years of fighting against the feeling of financial stagnation, even with multiple training and business strategies, something inside him told him that the problem was not external. It was not the market. It was not a lack of knowledge. It was something more subtle, deeper. It was the frequency with which he related to money, and even more so, with life. This man, an experienced businessman, successful in the eyes of many, carried a vibration of silent scarcity. It was not in his words. It was in his body, in the way he reacted to unexpected events, in the tightness in his chest when he thought about the future, in the tension that arose every time he spoke about revenue. No matter how much revenue he earned, something in him continued to operate at the frequency of fear. And this fear, however disguised it was perceived by the field. That was when he discovered Napoleon Hill's principles with a new ear, not as a mental strategy, but as a vibrational reconnection. And he decided to enter the 54-day cycle. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't share it on social media. He didn't seek recognition. He simply committed. Every morning, he would repeat a phrase of power in silence. As soon as he woke up, he would visualize himself for a few minutes living the freedom he desired. He would feel the vibration of confidence in his body. And at night, he would write down 3 emotions that he had sustained throughout the day. Nothing external changed immediately, but inside, Everything began to reorganize itself. In the second week, he noticed that he no longer reacted with anxiety to unexpected events. In the third, he began to make decisions with more clarity. In the fourth, an old proposal was reactivated by a forgotten client. He didn't make any extra effort, but there was something new emanating. A calm that had not existed before. A center. A coherence. At the end of the 54 days, his bank account had changed. But more importantly, his internal vibration had transformed. He no longer sought money with disguised desperation. He no longer moved out of fear. He was anchored in a new frequency, the frequency of silent trust, of embodied worthiness, of natural flow. This is not an isolated case. It is simply a reflection of what happens when you hold, with presence and intention, a different vibration than usual. When you let go of the rush and choose the process. When you stop seeking proof and start offering vibrational truth to the field. Reality had no other choice. It had to reorganize itself because the field it emanated was no longer the same. The emotional consistency factor, the secret behind any manifestation. There is a profound difference between doing something every day and sustaining a frequency every day. Practice is important, but it is the emotion behind the practice that shapes the field. You can meditate religiously every morning, repeat affirmations with discipline, visualize your new life with dedication. But if, at the end of all this, you return to feeling anxiety, doubt, frustration, it is this vibration that is being communicated to the universe. Energy does not respond to the gesture. It responds to the emotional coherence of the gesture. This is why so many people get frustrated with manifestation. They do everything right, but feel everything wrong. They execute the steps, but carry within themselves a vibration of absence. They are so focused on what they want to achieve that they forget what they are really emanating. The vibration of lack, the frequency of doubt, the emotion of fear disguised as faith. Napoleon Hill said that thought, in order to be creative, needs to be charged with emotion. And not just any emotion, but the emotion that corresponds to the reality that you want to manifest. The body needs to get used to that emotion. It needs to recognize it as familiar. It needs to become fluent in that vibration. And that only happens when there is emotional consistency. Not for a few minutes, but for days, for cycles, for 54 days. Emotional consistency is not feeling good all the time. It is remembering, even on difficult days, the vibration that you have chosen to sustain. It is not identifying with the old pattern that returns to test your resolve. It is noticing the emotion that tries to take control and choosing a different response, a deeper breath, a higher thought, a more aligned gesture. It is in that space between impulse and response that the field begins to change. Because what you sustain emotionally, even without realizing it, is what you transmit. And what you transmit inevitably becomes a magnet, an energetic invitation, a silent message to the universe. And the universe, in its intelligence, only responds. That is why manifestation is not an isolated act. It is a constant field, a field that you nourish, that you protect, that you honor. And this field only becomes stronger when your emotion stops being a reaction and becomes a choice. A conscious choice, a present choice, a choice that repeats itself until it becomes you. Because in the end, you don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you sustain. And only those who feel with truth, those who live with presence, those who vibrate with consistency, sustain. Why spiritual procrastination doesn't feel like procrastination. It doesn't come with the same weight as common laziness. It doesn't carry the obvious guilt of someone who abandons something important. Spiritual procrastination is subtle, disguised, almost always rationalized. You just postpone meditation for later. You stop reading in the middle. You forget about visualization for a few days. You think everything is fine because, after all, they are just details. But these details, in the vibrational field, are cracks, small fissures that, when accumulated, begin to destructure the frequency that was being built. This is how the field loses strength, not with major ruptures, but with silent absences. Spiritual procrastination is treacherous because it seems harmless, and many times it comes dressed up with noble justifications. Lack of time, too many commitments, urgent priorities. The world demands, life calls, and your commitment to yourself is pushed aside. Just for today, just for this week, only until things calm down. But the field doesn't wait. It doesn't pause. It just responds. And when the vibration you were feeding is interrupted, it begins to dissipate. The strength that was being built up disperses, and the previous frequency, the one you so long to transcend, returns more easily, because it is known, because it has a history, because it is ingrained. Napoleon Hill spoke about the importance of emotional discipline, not as rigidity, but as fidelity to purpose. A fidelity that proves itself in moments when it would be easier to postpone, on days when there is no motivation, on days when everything seems more urgent. Spiritual procrastination is not just a routine failure. It is a subtle disconnection from what you have decided to become. It is at this point that the choice becomes alive. You don't need to feel like it. You just need to remember who you are becoming. You need to remember that each micro-choice vibrates in the field, and that the universe is listening. It doesn't listen to your audios. It listens to your coherence. It feels your field, and this field is built with small, daily fidelities, with silent decisions, with gentle returns to practice, even after deviations, because the path does not demand perfection. It demands presence, and presence is this: returning, re-choosing, remembering, sustaining, even when everything inside you wants to negotiate with the old identity, even when the mind says that today is not so important. It is. Each day is. Each gesture is. Each repetition vibrates, and each vibration, sustained or neglected, is shaping what you call reality. The paradox of control. The more you force time, the more you block the flow. There is a type of anxiety that does not scream. It whispers. It whispers goals. It whispers deadlines. It whispers, "I need it to happen soon." It is a spiritual anxiety, often confused with focus. But behind this focus, there is fear. Fear that nothing will change. Fear that time will pass. Fear that the universe will forget. And this fear, even camouflaged as productivity, emits a vibration of distrust. Distrust in time, distrust in life, distrust in the field itself. This is where the paradox reveals itself. You want to control the steps of the universe, but in doing so, you block its response. Because the universe does not bow to your haste. It responds to your vibrational maturity, to your ability to activate and let go, to direct and trust, to act and allow. This is not passivity. This is energetic wisdom. It is understanding that there is a time for planting and a time for harvesting, and that forcing the harvest before the time destroys the seed. Napoleon Hill spoke of decisive action, but he also spoke of faith. And faith is not passive waiting. It is the vibrational certainty that sustains the field even in the absence of signs. William Walker Atkinson said that the universe responds to emotional trust, and trust does not need to be rushed. It is sustained by presence, by surrender, in the space that you offer, so that the invisible can work without interruptions. Forcing is different from maintaining. The first is born of fear. The second is born of presence. Forcing is wanting to prove that you are in control. Maintaining is knowing that the right vibration has already begun to act. Control, when guided by the ego, tries to manipulate time. Presence, when guided by the spirit, aligns with the rhythm of creation. And in this rhythm, time expands. The response adjusts. Reality reorganizes itself. Spiritual maturity is activating the field with clarity and then letting it breathe, because the field needs space to move what cannot yet be seen. Control suffocates. Surrender allows. Anxiety blocks. Trust flows. It is in this state of active trust that manifestation happens, not because it was forced, but because it was allowed. You are not here to control the invisible. You are here to collaborate with it. And this collaboration requires listening. It requires patience. It requires a vibration of someone who knows that they are already on the way, even if the eyes do not yet see. Because in the language of the universe, seeing is not the beginning. Feeling is. Sustaining is. Trusting is. And that changes everything. Mental model. Think as if you already have it. Act as if you're building it. There is a silent wisdom in living reality before it manifests, not as a denial of the present life, but as an alignment with what is being created. Thinking as if you already have it is more than imagining achievements. It is feeling the vibration of what is already yours by vibrational right. It is waking up with the emotion of someone who already lives in peace. It is walking with the posture of someone who has already found a purpose. It is breathing with the lightness of someone who already knows that everything is flowing. But thinking is not enough, because the universe does not respond only to the mind. It responds to the body, to action, to practice, to embodied vibration. Therefore, thinking as if you already have it needs to be intertwined with acting as if you are building, because there is still ground being prepared. There are still structures being shaped. There are still old versions being dissolved. And acting, even without seeing everything ready, is a silent declaration of mature faith. This combination, accomplished thought and committed action, is what creates the most powerful magnetic field. This is what transforms desire into presence, dream into direction, possibility into reality. Napoleon Hill knew this when he said that faith must be accompanied by a defined purpose. And this purpose, in order to manifest itself, needs to find someone in you who is willing to act every day as if they were nourishing something sacred. It is not about fooling yourself. It is about anticipating vibrationally what is to come. It is a question of frequency, of coherence between what you imagine, what you feel, and what you do. The universe understands this coherence as truth. And truth attracts. Truth has weight. Truth has vibration, and this vibration begins to influence everything around you. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to convince anyone. You only need to sustain, with delicacy and firmness, this double presence, that of someone who already is, and that of someone who is still building, because the field responds to intention, but bends to maturity. And this is maturity, the wisdom of living the new while it is still invisible, and the humility of building the ground with patience, with rhythm, with truth. This internal attitude changes everything because it communicates to the universe that you are ready, that you are already vibrating at the frequency of what you desire, and that you are willing to be an active part of the construction of your own reality. There is no longer a separation between who you are and who you want to be, because you have already started living as if you were. And this, as if you were, is exactly what makes it happen. How Napoleon Hill used the power of the invisible without abandoning the real. He spoke of thought. He spoke of purpose. He spoke of faith. But behind every word written by Napoleon Hill, there was a silent practice that many ignore. The ability to live with one foot in the invisible and the other on the solid ground of action. He understood the strength of the vibrational field. He knew that creative imagination was a bridge to new realities, but he never despised the physical world. He was never fooled by a spirituality that ignores work, habit, commitment. The power of the invisible, for Hill, was not a refuge. It was a laboratory, a space where the mind could rehearse the new reality, create new connections, generate a vibration that would later be sustained with concrete acts. There is no contradiction between dreaming and doing, between visualizing and acting, between silence and building. The contradiction lies in believing that it is enough to imagine, that it is enough to desire, that it is enough to feel. Hill insisted, you need to act, you need to repeat, you need to sustain. The mind alone has no power, but the mind that decides, combined with firm emotion and coherent behavior, has a power that transcends the limits of logic. That is when the invisible becomes real, when what you think, feel, and do is in harmony, when the energy you emanate does not contradict itself, when there is vibrational integrity between your internal universe and the way you move in the world. This is sacred duality, the ability to imagine in detail and at the same time create routines, to access high vibrational states and at the same time take care of the small tasks of the day, to talk to the invisible in the morning and do what needs to be done in the afternoon. Because true manifestation happens in this intertwining. It is born in frequency, but grows in practice. Hill did not romanticize faith. He trained it. He cultivated it like one would cultivate a muscle. And this training required constancy, structure, choice. He knew that the faith that moves mountains also moves habits. It also shapes behaviors. It also demands decision. That is why the power of the invisible is not an invitation to escape from reality. It is a call to transform reality from another layer of consciousness. It is a lever, a key, an impulse that only becomes a path when it finds, on the other side, someone willing to make the invisible live in the body, in the routine, in time. That was Hill's secret, and it is the secret that sustains the 54 days. Not to live only in the invisible, but to let the invisible become action, become form, become life. Living metaphor, Chinese bamboo and the silent vibration that precedes the explosion. For the first few years, nothing happens. You water, tend, prepare the soil, but nothing sprouts, nothing emerges, no visible signs of life. And it is easy to think that everything is wrong, that the seed has died, that the process has failed. But Chinese bamboo does not grow like other plants. It works invisibly. It grows downward. It creates deep roots, silently, invisibly, until one day, suddenly, it explodes upward. It grows meters in a few weeks. But this rapid growth is only possible because of the time of invisibility. The 54-day journey is exactly like that. A period in which, on the outside, almost nothing seems to happen. Habits are repeated. Intention is sustained. Emotion is trained. But the external world remains the same. Circumstances do not change. Answers do not arrive. The old mind begins to whisper, "You are wasting time. Nothing is working. This is an illusion." But like the bamboo, you are putting down roots. Energetic roots. Emotional roots. Roots of vibrational coherence. These roots are invisible, but they support everything. They are what will keep your new reality firm when it finally blossoms. Because without roots, the new collapses. The miracle fades. The vibration cannot be sustained. That is why the invisible is sacred. That is why the time of silence is necessary. It is not an empty weight. It is a silent construction. When the bamboo finally breaks through the earth, it does not start from scratch. It simply reveals what was already being built. The same happens with you. When the manifestation finally arrives, it is not an event. It is a revelation. It is the moment when the invisible bows before your constancy. Not because you demanded it, but because you sustained it. Because you remained. Because you trusted. This is the living metaphor of the journey. This is what the 54 days offer. A field of roots. A space to deepen. A vibration that no longer needs proof, because it has already become true. And when this truth is complete, reality has no choice. It must respond. Because you're no longer asking, you are transmitting, you are vibrating, you are being. And that is irreversible. The field you build in 54 days is not only real, it is irreversible. Something changes. Not on the outside, not in others, not in the calendar, but in you. A change that makes no noise, but that completely changes the way you collapse reality. Because now it is no longer the thought trying to force a new life. It is the whole body vibrating the new identity. It is the heart beating at a different frequency. It is the mind sending out signals that no longer ask for more. They announce. Joe Dispenza explains with scientific clarity, when an emotion is sustained with constancy, it becomes a new neurological pattern, a new electromagnetic field. And this field begins to alter the body even before the environment changes. The body becomes an extension of the new vibration. It stops reacting to the past and begins to anticipate the future. And this future, although not yet visible, is already being transmitted. After 54 days of true alignment, the difference becomes noticeable. You no longer need to mentally repeat what you want, because now you are. And when you are, you transmit, you magnetize, you become the field that you once only visualized. And the universe, by its nature, responds to fields, not to loose words, not to fickle desires, not to brief feelings. Napoleon Hill said, "Thought is the most powerful thing in the universe when accompanied by faith and definite purpose. But what is faith, if not an emotional habit, an internal practice that transforms expectation into silent certainty? The faith that creates realities is not anxious faith. It is vibrational faith. The kind that repeats itself tirelessly, that sustains without demanding, that remains without seeing. And when this faith is sustained for 54 days, something profound happens. The field ceases to be an attempt. It becomes identity, and identity is not negotiable. It is not lost. It does not dissolve at the first sign of resistance, because now, what was intention has become frequency. What was visualization has become structure. What was desire has become presence. You do not manifest what you dream. You manifest what you sustain with emotional maturity, because the universe does not respond to the intensity of your desire. It responds to the depth of your being. And when this being vibrates with constancy, with clarity, with coherence, everything around you begins to reorganize itself. People, situations, opportunities, ideas. Everything begins to gravitate around who you have become. This is the true field, and it is irreversible, because once you build it from the inside out, no external circumstance has the power to erase it. It is yours. It is you. It was cultivated, silently, patiently, powerfully, and now, finally, it blossoms, not as magic, but as a response, as a fruit, as an inevitable extension of your new vibration. Listen carefully. You have come this far, and that, in itself, is a rare choice. Few remain. Few cross the invisible. Few sustain what they have decided to be. But you have remained. You have crossed words, emotions, reflections, and now you are faced with something that can no longer be undone. A new field has been initiated. A new vibration is underway, and this vibration has a life of its own. During this time, you have not only listened, you have felt, you have remembered, you have seen yourself in pain, in cycles, in choices, in silences. And it is in this recognition that true transformation begins. Not at the moment you learn something new, but at the moment you decide to no longer be who you have always been, and you decide to sustain this decision, even when nothing outside changes, because you have already begun to change inside. Joe Dispenza confirms what Napoleon Hill intuited decades earlier. The body, when trained in a new emotion, begins to respond to reality as if it had already happened. And this body, now different, begins to emit different signals. It begins to attract different experiences. It begins to access frequencies that were previously unattainable, because it is no longer reactive. It has become creative. This creation is not born of effort, nor of struggle. It is born of coherence, of emotional maturity, of sustained vibrational repetition. This is what the 54 days offer. Not an immediate miracle, but an irreversible field, a solid foundation on which new life can grow, without collapsing, without regressing, without depending on external validations. You do not need to ask for more, because now you transmit. You are no longer looking for a sign. You have become the sign, a sign of presence, of truth, of consistency, of pure frequency. And this frequency, it has a weight, it has a signature, and this signature is recognized by the universe. It does not need proof, it needs coherence, and you are already vibrating the coherence of the new. So if this path spoke to your soul, it is not the end, it is the beginning of a silent but profoundly transformative journey, A journey where each day will be an affirmation, not in words, but in posture, in energy, in presence. Because you now know it's not about what you desire, it's about what you sustain. It's about what you have already become, and that no one can take away. That is yours. That is already.